All right, everyone. Welcome to Simple Present Tense Part 4. As I promised in the previous video, that in Part 4 of the Simple Present Tense, we are going to look at the WH question. Now, the WH question is a question that contains what, where, when, how, who. This question is different to the yes-no question in that you cannot answer the WH question by starting with a yes or a no. With the WH question, you need to kind of like expand on your answer. For example, if someone asks, "Where do you play football?" I cannot answer this question by saying yes or no at the beginning. I need to state the place because the question had where. So I need to say, I play football at my town's football field, something like that. Okay? So these are WH questions. And with these WH questions, we are going to use the verbs in them. All right. So let's get started. Let us first talk about the structure. So the simple present tense verb sentence structure, WH question, verb sentence, meaning that it is a WH question that contains a verb in it, a real verb, not a verb to be, but a real verb or an actual verb. All right, so let's get started. The structure is as follows. When we form a WH question, we need, of course, the WH question, which can be who, where, why, when, how, okay? And then after that, we have to put the auxiliary verb do or does. Now, as you know that whether we use the auxiliary verb do or does is dependent on our subject. As we said, for he, she, and it, we use does. For I, you, they, and we use do. Okay? After that, we then need the subject, which is, of course, the person or the thing that is doing the action in a sentence. And then once we're done with that, we then need to put our verb in its infinitive first form or original form. We do not do anything to our infinitive verb. We do not add es or ies or s. We leave it in its first original infinitive form. After that, we need our object, which is the person or the thing that is getting the action. And lastly, we put other words of our sentence. And of course, we put the question mark to show that it is a question. Now, just to reiterate, or just to repeat, for he, she, it, use does. For I, you, they, and we, use do. If the sentence is a WH question, we do not add s, es, or ies at the end of the verb. Why? Because the auxiliary verbs does and do already meet the subject-verb agreement depending on the subject we have. So if our subject is a she, for example, already the auxiliary verb that we use, which is does, it meets the subject-verb agreement. Why? Because it ends with es. Hence, we do not change or do anything to our infinitive verb. We leave it as it is. The same goes if our subject is I, you, they, or we, right? Like we said, for those subjects, I, you, they, and we do not do anything to our verb. Hence, our auxiliary verb is in its original infinitive form. It doesn't end with es. Okay? So remember this. You do not change the verb. You leave it in its original infinitive form if your sentence is a WH question. If your sentence is a yes-no question. If your sentence is a negative sentence. You only change it for the subjects he, she, it if your sentence is a positive sentence, as we saw in our first video on the simple present tense part 1. All right, so we got the structure and also we have the rules that we can use to form our WH questions, verb sentences in the simple present tense. Let's now do some exercises. The exercise says, change the following sentences into the simple present tense WH question verb sentences. Okay, so we have to change our sentences into the simple present tense WH question verb sentences. Okay, so let's start. So the first question is as follows. Where space he kick the ball every day? So it's supposed to say every day, right? So there is a mistake here, not very day, but every day. Okay. So we have a WH question here, which is WH, where it's asking for a place. And then we have the subject, which is he. So for he, she, it, use does. And we have the verb in its infinitive form. We leave it in that form. So the sentence is then, where does he kick the ball every day? Like I said, there is a typo here. It's supposed to say every, not very. It's supposed to say every day. Okay, so we've used does because the subject is he. Okay, and we leave the verb in its infinitive first form. We do not add es, we do not add s, we do not add ies. Why? Because the auxiliary verb already, right, shows that, right, our subject, it's a he, because the original verb is do, but then it has become does to show that the subject is a he. Let's move. Next sentence. When space a baby cry over nothing. So I have a WH question here. When, meaning that is asking for the time, right, or the day. So a baby is the subject. It can be a he or a she. So we know that we have to use does. So our sentence then becomes, when does a baby cry over nothing? The verb is left in its original infinitive form. We have used does because the subject is a he or a she. Why? Because a baby is a person. It can be a he or a she. Next up. How space Mike play football every Monday? So we have a WH question here. You can see W, N, and H. So we've got Mike, it's a he. So we have to use does. So our sentence becomes, how does Mike play football every Monday? Let's keep it moving. Next sentence. Why space I walk to work every morning? So we have a WH question here. You can see W and then H space subject I, right? So we said for I, you, they, and we have to use do, not does in this case, but do, because we use does only for he, she, and it. So our sentence becomes, why do I walk to work every day? Let's move. Next sentence. Where space you sing with the choir on Sundays? So you have a WH question here, where, which is looking for a place. So we have the subject you, and therefore we have to use do, because for subjects, I, you, they, and we use the subject do. As such, our sentence, correct sentence becomes, where do you sing with the choir on Sundays? Let's keep it moving. Why space they run together every morning? So we have a WH question here, which is looking for a reason, because it's a why. We've got the subject, they. So for subjects, I, you, they, and we use do. And therefore, our correct sentence becomes, why do they run together every morning? Let's go. Next sentence. How space Ken and Tom dance together? Okay, so we have a WH question here, W and H, how, which is looking at the system, the strategy, the way of doing something. So we've got Ken and Tom. So Ken and Tom, it's a he and he, but like I said in the previous video, we take them as a collective. So Ken and Tom is the same as they. The subject is the same as they. And therefore, as you saw in the previous example here, for the subject they, we use do. So the correct sentence is, how do Ken and Tom dance together? Next sentence. Why, space, Sylvia and I like rice and chicken. You've got a WH question here. You've got Sylvia and I, because I have included myself, therefore I regard the subject as we, because I am included in this subject. So this is similar to we. So for the subject, I, you, they, and we use do. And therefore, the sentence becomes, why do Sylvia and I like rice and chicken? Where, space, we drink orange juice every day. We've got a subject here, we, and therefore we have to use do. So the correct sentence is, where do we drink orange juice every day? All right? Okay, everyone. So that is the end of the simple present tense part 4, where we looked at the WH question, simple present tense, WH question, verb sentence. I hope you learned a lot in this lesson, and I believe that you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please be on the lookout for the next video in which I am going to explain the simple present tense verb to be sentences. Okay? Now remember, part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4, we looked at verb sentences. Now from part 5 to part 8, we are going to look at the verb to be sentences, meaning the sentences in the simple present tense that do not have real verbs, but whereby we use verbs to be. By verbs to be in the simple present tense, I'm talking about am, is, and are. Okay? But I am going to explain this in detail in the next video. Perfect. So we can end up here with regards to this lesson. Thank you so much. Goodbye and take care.